All right, peace and greetings, YouTubers. So if you haven't noticed by now, there's been a series of videos that continue to go viral literally every 6 or 7 hours where there's a new clip and you see somebody showing their behind in public because either they were inconvenienced or they just had a total meltdown or they're just being very socially awkward or somebody asked them to wear a mask. And in most of these clips that we've seen, it tends to be random white women who are just very pissed off about a lot of things, and so they choose that moment to go viral. And so pretty much social media has labeled this entire era just, attack of the Karens or Karens gone wild, so on and so forth. Now, for my own patience and blood pressure, I don't have the time to entertain each and every video, so what I decided to do was I'd make a quick collage and we'd have one big conversation, and then I would seal this conversation and move on to other things that are a bit more important, just because I don't have the patience and time to continue addressing each and every one of these clips that come out. So let's watch the collage and then we'll talk.
I don't wear a mask for the same reason I don't wear underwear. Things gotta breathe.
I think I'll get real close to you and cough on you then. How's that?
Mafia! You work the other Verizon store, you devil!
Okay.
Where is it?
Next door at the mall. Go.
Why the address is on that? You
Hey, go back to whatever Asian country you belong in.
Okay, racist.
This is not your place.
You bring your manager here.
You get up.
If you want to talk to me, you bring your manager here, you idiot, or go speak Chinese with your other staff.
Spirited too much, right? Folks just doing the absolute most. Some people have figured out that if they can do enough of the most, they just may be able to get their way when it's all said and done. However, in the current environment that we're living in regards to everything that's happening globally, that's just not the case. And so you're really seeing the worst in people come out and even be more so exemplified. Like these clips here are just like, are you kidding me? And these are just the few that I could find. There's so many, and you're just seeing the worst in people come out. And the thing that I will say as well is for anybody who works in the public realm or works in retail or works in any capacity where you have to deal with the masses on a daily basis and you have to deal with different personalities and triggers and aggressions and people that are going to throw tantrums, and then your company still expects you to take the high road each and every time, I commend you, because everybody's not built for that. That's not everybody's experience, and it takes a lot of patience and integrity to have to deal with that on a consistent and constant basis, especially now with everything that's happening in the United States and globally. Because when I saw those clips, the one where I saw the woman go and cough on the person, that one there, I was like, you know what? Okay, see, they keep doing it to the wrong people. I can't wait to see more clips of them doing it to the right person when you start seeing some of these people laid out on the sidewalk coughing instead. Like, people got to stop playing with folks, especially in this current environment. And I think what's happening is you're seeing privilege be challenged. You're seeing people's levels of comfort be disrupted because of everything that's happening. In the normal world of how America tends to operate, it's still chaotic. But when America was in its normalcy, I'll say a few months ago, in the past, a lot of these privileged white women who keep having these moments, when they needed to get their way, all they had to do was hoot and holler and things would align. All they had to do was call corporate or write a letter or cause a scene or whatever it is, or cry, and then everything aligns. But right now, that's not really the case because there's just too much going on, and the world is currently not centering around some of these women, and they're losing their minds. And again, it's not every single person in that collective, but the problem is there's enough of them that we can have an entire sample size to make an argument. And so that's what you're seeing. Because I'm like, really? I don't know if you saw the clip. I don't think I put it in a collage, but the one where the woman's in Joanne Fabrics losing her mind. And a lot of these conversations are in regards to just having to wear the mask. And I'm like, Joanne Fabrics? That's the store you want to go and pop off in, right? Okay, the store where like most of the customers in there are like 85. All right, like, come on, are you serious? Like, you gonna go in there and fight the Golden Girls? Like, no disrespect. Most of the people in the store are already a few heartbeats away. We don't need you to rush the process and stress them out, and you over here coughing on people and you trying to send them to the casket even earlier. Like, calm down. I absolutely can't. And what you're noticing is you keep seeing the same 3 or 4 behaviors, right? You see the one person who may just call everybody stupid and you're all sheep and blah, 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 blah. And normally that doesn't work. Then they go to the other behavior, which is, okay, all of a sudden now I have a condition. I have a breathing condition. Everybody all of a sudden has breathing conditions. Now, Any other day in America, Americans love to run around, especially white folks. Sorry to white folks, but it's the truth. A lot of white folks like to run around here like, we are built for it, tough. We are American. Yeah, kind of like thinking back to when John McCain was running for office and Sarah Palin was introduced. And you remember she was introduced and she did the whole line about, what's the difference between a pit bull and a hockey mom? Lipstick. Like, yeah! So back then, everybody was built for it, tough, and we could do it. Now all of a sudden everybody has breathing problems and everybody's sickly. Nobody can breathe. And so my response to that is, well, if you have a breathing condition or it's hard for you to breathe and you have all of these conditions in doctor's notes and everything, doesn't that mean you're most likely prone to be somebody who would not survive COVID if you caught it? So shouldn't you probably be in the house rather than going to a public area with no mask on and arguing with everybody and jumping in people's faces and right here arguing? Like, I don't understand. So you have that going on, and then in addition to that, if they're not doing the condition bit or calling everybody sheep, then they go and they latch onto, you're attacking all of my freedoms. And in addition, they will latch onto the conversation of freedom and tie it to somebody else's oppression. So, wearing the mask is like slavery. Wearing the mask was like having to be somebody who was Jewish during the Holocaust and have to sew the star onto their outfits and put the star sign on all of their businesses. That's what it feels like. And I'm like, really? So because your privilege has been challenged, you've been inconvenienced, you're uncomfortable, you are willing to latch on to oppressions that have affected marginalized groups of people to somewhat elevate your privileged argument. When in reality, if you want to have this conversation about the masks and everything, listen, I don't like wearing the mask either. That crap is uncomfortable. Sometimes it's hot, but it is what it is. We're in a global pandemic and there's things that are happening that have not really happened in most of our lifetimes. So in this specific instance, you're going to have to be a little inconvenienced until we can kind of figure out what's going on. Because unfortunately, with everything that's happening, there's no cure, there's no remedy, there's no treatment, there's not even any real answers. And sometimes the conditions and the questions in regards to everything surrounding COVID keep changing every day. So rather than play around and gamble with everybody's health, let's just take the most safe, precautions we can take until we can figure things out. But for some people, too much. They don't want to have it. So, it's slavery to wear the mask. It's like being in the Holocaust to have the star. And I can imagine if some of these states start shutting down again because the numbers are spiking again. If some of these states shut down, you can already see the people. Oh, this is like the trail of tears. The tears I cried when I couldn't go to Skipper's. Is Skipper's still a thing? I don't know if Skipper's is a thing, but it used to be like the seafood, like kind of not fast food, but restaurant kind of place on the West Coast. At least I remember when I was younger. But anyway, so folks have been losing their minds, especially a lot of the white women, where it's like, I just don't think they are in a position where they're used to being told no. Or I think really what it is that they're finally being treated like everybody else. Like I said in the past, white women could always just hoot and holler and get their way. That's how we ended up with the situation in regards to Emmett Till. That's what happened with George Stinney. That's what happened with the Scottsboro Boys. That's what happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma. That's what happened in Rosewood, Florida. Even American Idol, that's what happened with Simon Cowell. Like, if you go back to 2004, remember Simon Cowell was one of the judges on American Idol. He used to always sit like this, right? So American Idol had already been on for a good 1 or 2, maybe 3 seasons. But around this time, unfortunately, a lot of soccer moms were pissed off because of the Super Bowl halftime show with Janet and Justin. So around March and April of 2004, there were tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of complaints going to the FCC about everything, every 5 minutes, all the time. And so they got pissed off all of a sudden because out of the blue, they discovered that Simon was holding his middle finger up when he would rest on his head. And so people assumed that, hey, he's flicking off the crowd. And so the executive Fox had to say, hey, Simon, can you take this hand and do something else with it? Put it somewhere else, please. It's making people uncomfortable. It was even to the point where even the other member of NSYNC, JC Chazes, or Chazes, however you say his last name, he was supposed to perform this big sporting event and do the halftime show there, and he was pretty much, they're like, actually, you know what, never mind. You have some song called Some Girls Dance with Women, and it's just too much for our audiences right now. They're complaining they don't want it, so he was dismissed. And so in the past, they've always kind of been able to just kind of get their way. And I always called it like authoritative entitlement or punitive entitlement, where if you don't get your way, you're going to pretty much raise heck and do whatever you want to do until everybody gives you the attention you want, or until you make everybody else's experience less enjoyable. It's kind of like what I would call line leader syndrome. You remember back if you were in elementary, well, most of y'all should have been in elementary at some point. In elementary, pre-K, preschool, kindergarten, first grade, maybe even up to second grade, the teacher would always have a line leader, depending on what kind of school you went to, right? And so the line leader was like the most prestigious position you could have in the classroom. It was like you were number 2 behind the teacher. If you were the line leader, that meant when the class was gonna go to the library or to recess or to the cafeteria or to an assembly or to music or wherever they were going, you were gonna be at the front of the line and you were gonna leave the classroom. You got to pick the pace of how fast everybody was gonna walk, and maybe the teacher even gave you a badge or, you know, some kind of sticker to show that you were the line leader, and if you did a great job at the end of the day, you got a cookie, right? Line leader was lit. So in this scenario I want to use, let's just say, since we're speaking of Karens, let's just say we have baby Karen, right? So baby Karen is in the class. There's like 28 kids in this class. It's her day to be the line leader. The teacher has pretty much picked line leaders by alphabetical order, so everybody will eventually get to be line leader, and it just works in a cycle. So baby Karen does line leader, does a great job, has a good time. She gets her cookie, she has her badge and her sticker. It's been a great day. She got to boss everybody around all day, right? Come the next day, all right? Baby Karen does not want to give up that line leader position. So she jumps to the front of the line the next day, and the teacher's like, no, that's not how this works. Now, you know, your day will come again in another 28 days after everybody else is gone. Baby Karen says, oh no. She throws a tantrum. You know how like little kids, when they throw themselves on the floor and kick their legs in the air and all that crap like that? So she does that whole thing. And it's to the point where she causes a scene and she's hooting and hollering. All the other kids are kind of looking at her like she's crazy. So eventually the teacher just gives in and was like, fine, you can be it for one more day, but just this one more day. And so now the other kids are all mad because all of them have been bumped, and poor Zachariah, who's at the back of the line because his first name starts with Z, you know, now he has to wait 29 days. So he's pissed off. And so baby Karen gets to be line leader for a second day. Then we come to the third day and she tries this again. And what happens? Teacher caves in again, and eventually the teacher's like, forget it. You know what, here, you can just be it all year. This will be baby Karen's spot from now on, just to keep the peace. And so I feel like that's kind of been what's happened historically in America when it came to how some of these white women would behave in regards to not getting their way. But if we stick into this same scenario, now if we fast forward to 2020, this is how that same scenario looks. Let's just assume that same class moves to the next grade, right? Now there's a new teacher. This teacher doesn't care about tears and hollering and laying on the floor. Doesn't matter. In the past, with the previous teacher would always cave, or, you know, baby Karen would go home and do the most, and her parents would call the school and write a letter and so on and so forth, and the teacher would cave. This new teacher says, I don't care. This new teacher's like, listen, your day was this day, you're going to wait the next 28 days, and when it's your turn again, it'll be your turn. Or if you have a problem, you just won't be it at all. You know, cut up if you want to. And so, you know, she does the most, and she does not get to be line leader. And so baby Karen's parents call the school and write a letter, and this time the school backs the teacher. They're like, no, we're not doing that with you. Like, absolutely not. So no, not this year. And so baby Karen's parents get so mad because, of course, a lot of times kids are a reflection of their parents. So probably the parents act the same way baby Karen does. So now they're going to go to the school board meetings, and they're going to raise hell at the school board meetings. They're going to call it a 5 o'clock news. You know, they're going to start a Facebook campaign, GoFundMe. You know, we're going to start our own school. You know, whatever they got to do to pretty much raise, you know, the stakes and get the conversation going and bring all the attention to the fact that baby Karen did not get to be line leader every single day of the school year. And so everybody else from the outside looking in are kind of just like, really? That's what we're doing? Is it that serious? Is it really that deep? Okay. All right. And like literally that scenario, like that represents 2020 right now in regards to how people are looking at some of these women who are losing their minds over silly things, whether it's the mask or whether it's even when you see, you keep seeing clips, and I see a lot of men doing this as well, a lot of white men who get pissed off, but like, I don't know, they'll drive past somebody who's holding a sign that says like no police brutality, and then, you know, they put that car in reverse and go back, and they gotta get out. What are you doing? What is this supposed to mean? They're not used to being challenged. They're used to pretty much having things in an order in which they approve, in an order which always benefits how they operate and how they see the world and how they matriculate through society. And now that is being challenged, especially in regards to race in this country and how the country is responding, it's pissing people off, because in the past, whenever there's been any kind of conversation about police brutality or race, it would always get kind of stumped out and shut down after a while, or it would fizzle out and people would move on. But in the past few weeks, you've seen these large, massive protests and calls for justice and calls for change and everything. And it's not just black people. Now you're seeing additional white people and everybody else also jumping into the argument. So some people are just like, this is too much. This is not how you're supposed to behave. How dare you? And in addition to that, They're even mad at people within their own community who are kind of aligning and siding with these people, because it's like, wait a minute, how dare you? They are not us. You're losing the country. How many times have you seen a viral clip where somebody gets pissed off because, you know, there's a white person who goes and defends somebody who's black or Asian or Latino or whatever, and then you hear another white person challenge them and say, we're losing the country. You're going to be the reason we lose the country. So on and so forth. So with everything happening and with race and people taking down Confederate statues and changing Confederate flags and all of the things happening, in addition to the fact that people got to wear masks, it's a lot for some of these folks. A lot for these Karens. They are losing their minds. And I know some people are going to be like, you know, why are you trying to blanket statement, or why are you trying to marginalize? Especially as a man, you probably should be opening your mouth to talk about what women go through because you have privilege of being a man and so on and so forth. If we want to have the conversation of privilege amongst the genders, we can have this conversation. If we're talking women as a collective, yes, white women deal with a lot of setbacks within this country because this is still a man's world, specifically a white man's world. But if we're going to talk the collective of women, it is not equal across the board when it comes to race. If we want to talk numbers, we know that white women make 82 cents to every man's dollar, or at least every white man's dollar, because black men are not making the full dollar either, right? 82 cents to the dollar. However, black women are making 61 to 62 cents to every man's dollar. If we break it down by state, like a state like Mississippi, black women are making 56 cents to every man's dollar. Here in DC, it's 51 cents for black women to every man's dollar. In Louisiana, it's 47 cents to every man's dollar. So even when you're talking pay, things are really not equal. And in that same aspect, white women are still privileged over other groups of women. Even when you're talking the workplace, when you talk dress code, there's all kind of ordinances and laws and policies in some companies where natural hair is not allowed, where locks are not allowed, where braids are not allowed, where they're natural, you know, it's not deemed professional. That's not the experience for many white women. Even when it comes to just how people carry themselves in the office, black women don't get the luxury to be as vocal. They can't be emotional. They can't have any kind of urgency or be passionate, because then they're seen as, you know, they're mentally not mature for the position. They're gonna be too emotional. They're too irrational. This, that, and the third. You know, they don't get that. But if the tables are split and it's a white woman that does the same thing, it's, oh, she's a maverick in the office. She is, yeah, she's right up there. You know, she can hang with the boys. Same kind of thing. And if you're talking healthcare, we've seen the research and we've seen the studies where there's lots of people in healthcare who believe that black women have a higher tolerance for pain. And so when black women are in these hospitals and saying, hey, something doesn't feel right, I don't feel well, they're often ignored. When you're also seeing it when it comes to childbirth, and why you're seeing such a high mortality rate with both the mother and the child. In addition to that, when you're just talking about people who go missing and everything, when you're talking about little black girls and black women who go missing, you're not seeing the same sense of urgency in regards to white girls and white women who go missing. When you're talking about Amber Alert, who was Amber Alert named after? It wasn't one of us. That's all I'm saying. And so, like, literally, like, even when you talk about what we just saw in Milwaukee, which I can't wait to talk about in my next In the News, where you saw the two black girls going missing, and in addition to the police not really doing much, there wasn't even an Amber Alert issued for those two girls and everything like that. And a lot of that comes from the conversation of, a lot of times when it's young black adolescent girls, it's seen as, oh, well, they just ran away, they're troubled teens, they'll be back, you know, it is what it is, they think they're grown anyway. And so literally in that situation, the community ended up going and finding those two girls. And so those are conversations. Or even when you're talking education, black women are the most educated group in America as far as college degrees, but they also have the highest college debt, and they are still not getting those top tier positions in comparison to white women. So if we want to have the conversation amongst gender, then we got to really have the full conversation, not just the conversation where you feel like I'm attacking people. Folks are doing the most. And at the end of the day, it's kind of like, okay, if you want to sit here and be all big and bad because you don't want to wear a mask, you don't want to wear the mask, you don't like the stay-at-home orders, you think everything is stupid, then I'm like, you know what? Keep that same energy across the board. Because what I find funny is every time there's a conversation about police brutality and somebody gets shot and killed on video and we see what happens and the case is, you know, just straight cut clear, like no gray area, anything, you see people break their necks to say, well, why didn't they comply? Why didn't they listen? Why didn't they do? They should have did this. They should have been doing that. They should have been on that side of town. What were they doing here? What were they doing there? But now it comes to something as simple as a mask, and it's too much. I'm not doing that. We don't have to take this. And it kind of goes to that whole idea of when Americans, a lot of white Americans have that whole exceptionalism, that American exceptionalism personality. It kind of takes me back to, remember that, what was that movie? It was Sally Fields was in it. It was called Not Without My Daughter. This movie where, you know, she has a child with a man that's from Iran, and she goes to, I guess that was the ex-husband or something, but she goes to Iran so that the father can see the daughter, but she gets stuck over there and she's trying to get back to America, but she's pretty much trapped. And so there's this scene where they're pretty much telling her, like, listen, you're going to have to do this, that, and the third, because that's how we do things over here, and that's all it is to it. And she was, what? I'm an American. I'm an American. I'm an American. And they're like, yeah, but you're in Iran. You're not in America. So what's up? You know, same kind of ordeal. Like, that's what you're seeing where, you know, it's kind of like, we don't have to take this. We don't have to wear masks. So even though this store has clearly told you before you came in, please have a mask on because this, that, and the third, we'll still go in there and just cause a scene just because we can, because we feel that we're exempt from the rest of the world. And I'm not saying we as in me, but I'm speaking in terms of the people who are doing these actions. But that's really the reality of how a lot of Americans see themselves, where they see themselves as above the rest of the world. Exceptionalism, like exceptional. Nobody is better than us. So, you know, yeah, there's this global pandemic that's killed hundreds of thousands of people, but we're Americans. It doesn't affect us, even though we have the highest death rate from the pandemic. But, you know, it's crazy. So I'm like, you know what, keep that same energy across the board. Like, if that's the same way, if you can see, you know, the rebellion and the maverick element of not wearing a mask, then I don't see why people are breaking their necks to go and criticize every person who's unjustifiably killed by police. That's my question. It's just really a conversation of privilege, and it's always been that way. It makes me think of Abby Fisher. We've talked about her a few times, but remember Abby Fisher? She was the lady who did not get into the University of Texas. When it came to applying for college, if you were the top 10% of your class, you would automatically get in. She was not top 10% of her class, so she didn't automatically get in. So she was put into the same pool with everybody else in order to be considered, you know, for admission. And so she did not get in. And she felt that there were people who got in that did not deserve to be in. And so she discovered that there were 47 students who did get into the University of Texas who had lower grades than her. And so she felt that these must be black people who are affirmative action babies, who don't do the work, who aren't smart, who just got in because they're black, and that's not fair. And so she went all the way into the court system. And this went all the way to the Supreme Court. And she was willing to pretty much gut and seam rip affirmative action, all in the name of the fact that she didn't get into the school. Something that was a systematic, pretty much program pushed out after research and investigation that showcased, hey, because of the certain things that have happened within the United States, there are groups of people who just have not had the same opportunity. And if we can just give them an opportunity to just have a foot in the door, not to outperform and have more access than anybody else, but just to even be able to come into the room. And it doesn't mean they're going to get far into the room, but at least they can step into the room, and then it's on them to make it for the rest of the way. She was willing to take down that entire system that affects millions of people just because she as an individual did not get into the school. And the funniest aspect is that when you talk about affirmative action, white women benefit the most in regards to any other group of people. But she was willing to take that entire system down because she didn't get into the school. That goes back to what I said about authoritative entitlement or punitive entitlement, where somebody doesn't get their way so everybody else has to suffer because you want them to feel the same pain that you have because you've been disenfranchised or inconvenienced. And so the funniest bit with Abby Fisher was when they went and did the research with those 47 who had lower grades than Abby, 42 of them were white. I was just like, wow. All right. So 42 of them were white. And then in addition to that, there were 168 black and brown students who actually had higher grades than Abby that also did not get into the University of Texas. But they didn't go and try to take down an entire system utilized to try and help other students have an opportunity to better themselves. It was kind of like, okay, well, we'll just go to another school like other people do, because that's what happens when you have options and choices, you know? But, you know, it just reminded me of Abby. And I'm like, Abby really, like, she was really going to take down that entire system because she didn't get in. And the fact that she assumed and pretty much felt that, you know, it goes to that idea of seeing yourself as being way up here and everybody else is beneath you. She saw herself as above and felt other groups of people were beneath, and she is not somebody who has to pretty much be exposed to the same experiences as other people. And you're seeing that even in regards to this conversation with masks. That's why so many people are losing their minds, or even just pretty much being challenged with some of their behaviors and antics in public. You're seeing them lose their minds because for the first time, at least in a long time, they're being treated like everybody else. The privilege is not carrying any power right now because America is in chaos. And so that whole power structure is a little in shambles right now. And so until things normalize, people are going to be continuing to get the business from others when they're doing the wrong thing. So you're just seeing the privilege be challenged. And so Karens, I need y'all to get your stuff together. Folks don't have time for your foolery. And again, it's just, you're seeing the worst in people come out. It's been entertaining to watch, but it's just like, man, there's so many things that really carry weight in this country and globally that are happening right now. And y'all are in the way slowing down progress for other things. And also, I just want to say to the woman that had the whole bit about, you know, just like her not wearing underwear, things need to breathe. I'm just glad the kids are not in school, and I hope she didn't have kids, because I can imagine being her son and having to go to school the next day at the cafeteria and all the kids are like, yo, guess whose mom we saw on TV? Like, it's too much. Anyway, I'm off this. Share your 2 cents, subscribe.